order of things is we have quite an interesting panel. And I'd like to welcome the panelists on the stage, Jaanus, Liisa, and Scott. So find your places. And so today we will be talking about a lot of different things, but let's see where it takes us. Yeah. So first, let's start with introductions. So maybe Jaanus, you can go first.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jaanus. Currently, I work at Bolt, and I'm the head of fraud department there. So looking after all the fraud that's happening in the 50+ countries where we operate. So been at Bolt for 7 years. Before that, I worked as a software developer and project manager at Skype. So I had good, interesting times from that age and era.
My name is Liisa, and I'm a recovered civil servant. So now I only work with people I respect. You're welcome. And I worked in sort of between policy and cybersecurity at the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence as the CISO for Homeland Security in Estonia and the National Cyber Director for Estonia. But really my only sort of driving force is, does it suck and can I make it better?
My name's Scott Kenyon. I am the program lead for software testing for a university in the UK called BPP. Our university deals with big clients like big banks, all the major banks and local authorities, so government, which is fun. Was a tester for many, many years and then decided to start teaching it and shaping people's minds, which is always fun, especially testers' minds.
And hello, I'm Kaspar, if you didn't know that already. I'm one of the co-founders of Nordic Testing Days, and during my free time I also work at Bolt, but I work with payments. So now you understand why I had to grab Jaanus from the next desk practically and bring him over. So to open up the topic a little bit, so we are seeing, we were just discussing with Scott before that about 8 years ago he attended the panel, and I have also participated in some discussions where it was going around, automation this, automation that. Now it's AI this and AI that. So there's more automation, which has become pretty standard now. Now there's a lot more AI. But what is changing? What has really changed over the last 2-3 years in terms of fraud or cyber threats and testing? So let's start with maybe Liisa this time, because we have some quite volatile stuff been happening in the neighboring region.
I mean, first of all, AI is the blockchain of 2025. We all recognize that. And we try to stay clear of the people who just replaced that in their PowerPoints. Secondly, I guess this audience also knows the biggest difference between AI and machine learning. One of them runs in PowerPoint, but for the other one, you need to know Python. So that's sort of what's changed. But what we see is that there's a number of different actors. And to understand their adversarial strategies, you really need to understand their motivations. For nation states, they're probably less than 5% of incidents, whether we're looking at fraud, whether we're looking at cybersecurity, or just availability, anything. If you're looking at security incidents, I would say nation states or politically motivated players are less than 5%, probably even less than 3%, but they're the most detrimental because they're in it for the long haul. So they tend to fly under the radar. They tend to slowly, gain access, gain credentials, and they're either there to, spy, so gain access to privileged information, and then use it possibly to influence people, to influence decisions, to gain a strategic advantage, whether it's military or economic. And they're the hardest to detect because they are motivated to remain undetected. And even for the well publicly known nation-state-backed campaigns, the APTs had been in the networks and in the systems for, on average, 2 years. Criminals are very different because criminals are motivated by grabbing and running. Whatever they can benefit from, whatever they can monetize. And whether that's through gaining access to information that can be resold, particularly sensitive personal information and financial information, which allows for fraud, including credit card fraud, or whether it's to blackmail, to lock down systems and expect a ransom. So the criminals are in it for grab and monetize. And then, of course, there's people, and that's a decreasing amount, who are doing it just because they can. The proverbial hacker who's sitting in in their mom's basement, taking down systems because they've developed the ability. I don't think that's so 1990s, and I don't think that's really something to be concerned about anymore, because they've either moved up into legal activities or they moved up to monetizing what they can do. So that's one part. And then you alluded to the neighbor 200 kilometers that way, which is where Europe and NATO start in Narva in Estonia. Now the orcs are using all and any tools available to them, whether it's mis and disinformation, whether it's cyber, whether it's human influence and human operations, or whether it's tanks and missiles and drones, as we see on the ground in Ukraine, unfortunately. And all of that is to gain influence or to gain superiority in whichever way it's defined. And it's incredibly opportunistic, and it's incredibly reactive because it's reputational. It's to delegitimize the processes and the due process that both corporations and rule of law are based on. Which it basically means that whilst the politically motivated attackers, I consider them the smallest proportion, but the most potentially detrimental, is because they're in it for the long haul. They're seeking to avoid detection, so they're flying under the radar. And they're seeking to create doubt and confusion and delegitimize the way we have chosen to live our lives, whether it's through democratic elections or whether it's living in a space where I've taken Bolt 4 times in the last 2 days, and I pretty much trust that my data is safe with them. And based on my experience, the car generally shows up and only once has tried to explain to me where women belong, which was not on the backseat of his car, apparently. So the politically motivated attacker is doing everything to erode that trust. And in that, they're very opportunistic. They're sort of like American children trying to figure out if spaghetti is done, which is you throw it at the wall, and if it sticks, it's done. So the politically motivated attacker across, cyber and human and information operations is doing exactly that. It's throwing spaghetti at the wall in all directions and seeing what sticks. And that's the tricky bit about them.
Okay. Jaanus, what do you think? What has changed?
So at Bolt we deal with these criminals who are after money, motivated by money. So in some ways it's easier they come in fast and they want to cash out as much as possible. So what has changed in recent years is that they have definitely become more organized and more sophisticated. And usually when we see attacks coming, it's quite clear that they have already practiced it on Uber and some of our other competitors, that they know exactly what they're doing. They're highly skilled. So when you look at the graphs of like our fraud losses, when there is an attack, usually they're gonna try to figure out where the loophole is, and once they find it, it just ramps up like this. So they cash out as much as possible. So this is what we deal with on a daily basis. Overall in the industry, what has changed is there is a lot of talk, a lot of harm done due to romance scams. So these cases where the fraudsters, attackers are basically working a person over a long period of time, gaining their trust and building that relationship on some social network, and really taking all the money that they have, asking them to take out loans and basically ruining their life. So that's the biggest talk. Luckily on Bolt, we don't see that. That's not the way fraudsters use our platform, but that's the biggest thing that's happening right now. And they're using AI for that as well, to generate fake photos, fake videos. They can speak the language that the victim speaks, so that's something in their toolkit now that they have readily available.
I think looking back to obviously the question was what's changed in AI in testing. I think it's made every single tool now, and everything we look at always has the little shiny label saying AI. And I think we spend a lot of time being very reliant on it. And because we're all incredibly reliant on AI, you start writing tests or you start doing attack vectors, and it will say, oh, I could do this for you. I could do this for you. And sometimes we've got to think, well, who's testing the machine and where's the machine come from? Because especially there is a few AIs out there that are from not good countries and are in themselves bad actors.
China.
That's one of them. There's many out there. And I think as within the testing world, we're all trying to use and incorporate new technology to make our life easier and better. But we sometimes forget that the actual tool itself can be the bad actor. And we are happily downloading it onto our Windows machine. And then from there, it's just spreading. I think that's what's changed quite significantly. It's everywhere. So yeah, don't download an AI and put it on your machine.
Too late.
I know.
Jaanus, maybe you can go a little bit deeper on how sophisticated are these fraud schemes today, and can you really even detect them, or are we just left to react to them?
I mean, by definition, fraudsters are always kind of on the attack, so one step ahead. They're trying to poke the systems, right? And the sophistication really ranges. You have teenagers just trying opportunistically to do some orders on Bolt food. Like my daughter told me that she figured out the fraud scheme with her friends, that you order food on Bolt food using the cash payment method, and then when the courier arrives and hands you the food, you just take it and run away. You don't pay them. That's very classic fraud scheme, right? So you have that on one side, and then on the other side you have organizations, organized crime that are really trying to push hundreds of thousands of euros through the system to cash out by doing fake rides, signing up fake drivers with fake documents, mocking the GPS traces of the trips, like doing all of that very, very at a high level. So in some ways it is hard to detect it, but we use the help of machine learning and different tooling as well that you're looking for these anomalies. So we're looking at anomaly detection. So like I said, we have 50 plus countries, 600 or something, even more cities. It is hard to look at what's going on in all of those places. But when you see this activity, that all of a sudden that, let's say in Estonia, you see credit cards from Nigeria being used a lot, you know that it's suspicious. But it's just the combination of these countries that we have is huge, so we have automated tools that alert us that, hey, previous few weeks, we saw this level of volume, but now it has doubled. So somebody takes a look, and sometimes it's fraud. Sometimes we got an alert because there was a Taylor Swift concert somewhere. So we have a lot of foreigners coming to a city ordering Bolt. So you see that uptick. So first thing our people do when they get an alert, they go to Google or whatever news source and try to see what's going on in that city. Whether it's Taylor Swift, whether the Pope is there, or Formula One is happening. So there are ways to kind of try to catch those schemes as early as possible. But you're always a little bit behind, so you expect some losses, but our idea is also that fraudsters are there to make money, so the sooner we catch them, the less money they make, so their business case becomes not so attractive. So hopefully they go away from our platform to someplace else, whether it's Uber or Amazon or, they will not stop doing fraud, that's the reality as well, but at least we get them off our platform.
We already spoke a little bit about motivation. So the state actors are after influence or power, the fraudsters are after money, and in a way insiders are after the same thing. But Scott, what do you think? How can you really test for it?
I think testing, I think for any sort of cyber or fraud in itself, it's one of the hardest things because you are an internal element of your system, you are already behind the wall in your system. So whatever you test, you are immediately biased, no matter what, because you know how it's built. So people say, oh, well, but pretend to be an attacker. Okay, well, I'll pretend to be a fish as well. It don't make me a good swimmer. It's just, I think it's really hard to test. Especially now with obviously AI coming in, doing a lot of the testing for you. I've done some testing before, and the moment as a tester you even start to look and pretend and try and do attack, you have fraud, legal, compliance running down to your desk as quick as they can to go, please stop, don't tell anyone and sign this document. So it's a horrible balancing act. Because a lot of companies just are offshore. They'll say, oh, all our cyber and security is done by someone else. So the risk is just moved. I don't believe that. I think we should do it ourselves internally. But it's difficult because you are always an internal actor. You know the system. So some of the best security and fraud testers are stupid testers who don't know. To be stupid is a really good sort of skill set. I do it quite well sometimes. So, yeah, if you think you are going to do a good attack on a system, you aren't, because you're already 3 steps ahead, because you're internal. But pick up a Mac and try on a Mac. You'll get angry. So.
Yeah, maybe to add to that I think of the fraudsters as one of your best and it's not free testing resource, but they are the testers. They will find the loopholes. At some point they will know about your system more than you will, even though they don't have the inside knowledge. Like we have an example that, thanks to our payment team, there was an edge case that happened in Ghana in our Bolt Food application. So some local people kind of by accident, I guess, they stumbled on a fact that if you use the particular credit card from Mali, which is one of the neighboring countries, I think it was the Agricultural Bank of Mali, that if you added that card into the system, any card number that begins with the Mali BIN, even if it wasn't a real card, it gave back an error from the bank as it should. But there was something off in the error message. And our system treated it as a positive signal that the card was added successfully, so therefore you could pay for Bolt Food. So some people figured it out, I guess, by accident, and they were not shy. They shared it on social media. And so everybody in Ghana apparently knew about this scheme, and they started just ordering food like crazy. And the way we figured it out, of course, it was Friday evening, we were about to go home, and then the local team in Ghana notified us that, hey, something is really off. Our couriers are calling us, and they're complaining that the freaking bags are too heavy, that they go to pick up the food and they can't deliver it. Like one person can't deliver it because obviously if you get free deliveries, you're going to order a lot of alcohol, which is heavy. You're going to order a lot of food. So they're just massively ordering without actually paying for it. So this was something that was kind of a bug in our system. It was partially the fault of the Agricultural Bank of Mali, but this is how we found out about it. So there was, initially actually the local team was super happy. They saw that numbers were going up, but yeah, we figured out quite quickly that this wasn't actually how we got paid. And it also showed that sometimes it's your good users who end up being the fraudsters, because given the opportunity that if I told you that free food, free alcohol, like why not? Like, let me try this, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, we saw that yesterday as well in the party.
I think
saw me walking out with.
I think one of the fun things is obviously how do you test them sort of edge cases, because there's only even if you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testers, it's still not enough when you've got hundreds, thousands, millions of people using your technology.
And how many banks do we have, Kasper? Like different banks with credit cards?
It's
You mean banks worldwide?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I mean, it's
too many.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, try testing all of those combinations.
So when we kind of look at this sort of testing, and what I kind of teach and deliver is that think of the opposite side. When it goes wrong, what happens? What's your recoverability like? Because we always test for let's make it, let's break it, let's see what happens. But no, I want to spend as much effort on, okay, when it does go wrong or it's not going as well or we stop it down and close it, how do we recover? What's our recoverability for the rest of our population and our users?
And I mean, in the end, this comes down to resource decisions, right? We can use infinite resources on any area of technology. And resource decisions, therefore, have to be risk-driven. And this is where I think a lot of technologists can educate their management, their decision makers. We're never going to test every card of every bank against every service of every service provider, because that's impractically expensive. And we don't have the testers for that. The resource would have to come from somewhere. So what you need to do is to test for the most detrimental and the most likely. Yeah. And make all your decisions to avoid the most detrimental and the most likely. And the most detrimental doesn't necessarily mean with the biggest effects, but it's the ones for which you have the worst recovery.
Yeah,
so, I mean, what we found out in a storm in Estonia a couple of years ago is that with the essential services, they all have pretty good recovery plans. And in particular, the ones that influence everyone are, electricity and power, so the grid. It's connectivity. In most cases, that means, the telcos and their mobile services and mobile data. And it's either, depending on the population, it's either fuel for the car or it's cash as an essential service. It depends a little on the demographics and on the geography. And what we found out is a few things. First of all, everyone had great recovery plans that had been practiced and exercised and worked, and everyone knew about the processes that rested on the planning assumption that other services would be up. So telcos said, if we had gas and if we had electricity, our recovery time is less than an hour. Banks said, if there was electricity, our recovery time is less than an hour. So, and electricity said, if we had connectivity, then our recovery time is less than an hour because we know what to prioritize, but because we don't have connectivity, we're sending people out to functioning places and they're not going to non-functioning places. And we also found out that everyone had assumed they can borrow generators from someone. So everyone was planning on borrowing the same generators from the National Defense League, who also needs generators. So the next time a crisis was looming, which we knew to be a power crisis because, again, a neighbor 200 kilometers that way. Everyone rushed out to buy generators. There's now a lot of unused second-hand generators available in Estonia if you're in that market. And those who couldn't buy generators figured that they'll at least prepared for something, so they got portable toilets instead. So it has to be risk-driven, is the point of that story. Now you have to think of what's likely, so that the knowing, the abundant, and you have to think about what's business critical in a detrimental way that you don't have good recovery for. And you have to prioritize that. Because let's face it, in terms of whether it's fraud attempts or whether it's the sort of your everyday cyber attacks, they're abundant and they're not particularly sophisticated. And they're abundant and not particularly sophisticated because technology has democratized, and even your daughter, who I'm assuming is not of adult age and therefore couldn't be prosecuted, can figure out things.
I mean, she didn't do the scheme, but she knew about it. She's like,
tell
it was
her,
all academic.
Hypothetical, of course. But technology has democratized, so anyone has the potential to try, or at least hypothesize about it. And secondly, most of what you need for fraud or for cyber attacks is available as a service. So whether it's ransomware as a service, and then the Bitcoin payment, if you're successful as a service, or whether it's denial of service attacks as a service, which are quite easily avoided with content delivery networks and a few products. So they're not sophisticated, but they're abundant because it's easily accessible.
It reminds me of a story when I was looking at the bank many years ago. We obviously did like anybody do. We have 2 data centers. We have one in one city, one in another, just in case there's an attack. And we were speaking as the testing team. We were like, okay, let's test obviously this data center going down, so it'll automatically switch over. We can test for recovery. We can make sure that if someone does come in and attack us, we protect and then move over. And we're speaking to the information security and fraud. Yeah, but what happens if they both go? What happens? I said, yes, but if both of the 2 major cities in the UK go down with cyber attack,
then your data center ain't our biggest problem as a society.
The biggest problem is not the 2 data centers. The biggest problem is nobody cares at that point. If 2 of the very largest data centers, which have government stuff on as well, they go down, I'm not going to test for a meteor hitting it. No, that's not what I'm testing for. But I think quite a few years ago, when I think the attackers, so a lot of hackers and stuff like that, were on the front edge of technology, and they were quicker and better than us. Attackers are always 1 step ahead anyway, but I feel like they were 10 steps ahead. Now I think we've caught up, and we protect our data more, but it's always when we come to risk, okay, well, how do we test that? And sometimes the most logical thing, especially when thinking about all the adaptations with AI and automation, is we don't need to go that far. It's okay. And
this sort of the idea of being prepared to the unknowns is definitely something we want to explore a little further down the line. But, fundamentally we know that you have to look at technology comprehensively, right? It's not just the tech or just the code or just the product or the software and the hardware, but it's the people and processes around it. So you have to look at it comprehensively in its context. And that also means you have to test, as you were saying, comprehensively in its context. There's no point in whether it's testers or whether it's product owners or whether it's developers going around in desperations about users. Human nature is human nature, work with it, not against it, and definitely do not admire it as a problem. And that means that look at the context when you're testing as well. In your example, what we've discovered I mean, I've seen plenty of organizations where the technology is A-okay, it's great, but every time there's an incident or an issue or a disruption, it's because of logistics, it's because of people, it's because of processes. Both as a client, but also as a, the owner responsible for the service, I don't care why it breaks. I care that it doesn't break more than is absolutely necessary.
I find it quite quite funny that we kind of always start off with the automation, technology, AI, all the advanced stuff. In the end, it boils down to very simple things. Do we have power? Do you have a backup generator yourself and you're not planning to borrow it from someone? Can you put up a portable toilet? I mean, otherwise you're deep in, okay. So it looks like that the more advanced we get, the more resilience is brought in by having very, very basic things in place. And it's much, much easier to go, to recover from that basis. But maybe you can share a funny or a weird story from your career. Is it testing fraud or cyber defense? And maybe start with you, Scott.
When I was at the bank, I'd just moved into the IT team as a junior tester many, many, many years ago, a bit more than I think. And I was really, really curious because the rest of the testers in the bank were very, very strict. It was very regulated, so it was very, this is what we do and why we do it. And I turned up all colourful and smiling and, happy as a tester, which is quite funny. And I was at AD, my mentor was like, okay, well, to get used to the system, just explore. Just have fun, just explore. Okay, so I sat on my computer, started exploring. And I went, okay, let me try this, What I didn't know is I was on live. So as you can anticipate, I didn't realize it was on live until I started making payments. So I found an account and I thought, okay, well, because I come from the operations side of the bank, one of the big things is bank fraud or a suspicion of fraud. So the police will say, this person is a suspected bad actor. Can you freeze all their accounts? You get like a thing, so everything gets frozen. So you can't make payments, you can't make changes to your account. And because I'd been dealing with them the week before, I'm like, let me get one of these customers. I got the customer, I made payments, I changed the account. And I thought, I shouldn't be able to do that. And then I realized, I'm on live. So after I picked myself up off the floor, because in the sheer panic, I found a problem. I think I found a problem. And actually, we'd pushed a new update about 6 months before, and it had removed the checking for the flag. So for 6 months, all our bad actors could do what they wanted. That was a very, very, very fun thing to put on the risk register. And a very, very fun thing to sit there and go, oh yeah, as a bank, we've got one job. When the police say, don't let this person do something, don't, and we did. And ever since, from that day, I've always said, am I in live? But it was fun, it was curious, and we found a very major thing. I'm not going to say what bank it is, because I'm not allowed, but that was like one of my funniest sort of first ways into testing in live without trying. Whoops.
I'm asking for a friend. So how much money and where did you transfer it?
By accident.
Yeah. Not enough and not to myself.
Liisa.
So this is one of the fundamental central systems that keeps this country going. And that also means that it was developed in the conceptualized in the late 90s, developed in the early 2000s, and has been refactored with added complexity, both technical and legislative. And the more complex a system is, the more fragile it is. The older a system is, the more fragile it is. Which is when you really need to run vulnerability scans. Because at one point you don't fully understand the tech stack anymore, and you don't know if you have any critical vulnerabilities in this huge complex system. And that also means that you run vulnerability scans on live systems that have several business continuity plans and reverts. Well, if a system is fragile, then even your least aggressive and very toned down vulnerability scan registers automatically as an incident because the load's too much for this fragile system. So it reverts to the backup system, which is more fragile. So it reverts, so the first and second are fine, but the live services are running on the secondary, so the third backup, which is so fragile that it goes down. So we punched probably our most critical service in the face by doing a vulnerability scan. We also punched law enforcement in the face by doing a phishing attempt. Just to talk about human nature, we phished only people who work at the computer. So we didn't phish the people who work out in the field. We didn't phish the sort of technical staff, some of the administrative staff. How many people do you think clicked on the link in the first hour?
A lot.
Half, 60%.
Wow.
Because of course it was the classic, the minister's directive on new salaries, where the minister's name was misspelled. The link was wrong, the design was wrong, the document registry was wrong. There were about 9 indicators that this is not right. Yet more than 50% of people clicked on the link. And that's what I mean by human nature.
Did they get the raise?
No, but they did get panicked, and some of them sort of clocked out of a very active situation where they shouldn't be clocking out because they panicked and they shut everything down. So I was in another critical call when my engineers sort of broke into my office with a post-it that said, "Everyone's panicked, what do we do?" So I said, "No, we're shutting it down. We've done it for 62 minutes. It's clear that we need more education on think about what you click on. We're shutting it down, but the best practice dictates that you don't just shut the website because that worries users more. Instead, you put a big disclaimer on it." So an hour into this pen test, into this human behavioral phishing test, we put a big red disclaimer on it saying, "This is a phishing test run by your InfoSec team. Please do not enter any credentials. Please do not log in. Please do not do anything." How many people do you think still entered their credentials? Half of the ones who clicked after that. And what we found out is that you have to design better systems. You have to work with the users. So instead of the first login page being credentials-based, username and password, we swapped the login screen to the centrally managed Estonian ID card or mobile ID. And that changed user behavior fundamentally because now they had to click once to enter their credentials, which being, breached would be a much bigger problem for us because the PIN code's a one-time exchange, right? So we changed from less than 10% of users using ID card to about 40% by just a simple design change. So work with human nature.
Okay, my story is maybe more happier and has a more positive ending, but I'm not a tester, I'm not a developer anymore, so I only test in live. That's my mantra, especially for payments, because when payments team comes up with some new functionality, I assume that they have tested it in pre-live and in the sandbox, and I know from experience that when you integrate with a payment services provider, they have a nice sandbox, the APIs and the calls all work there, everything goes smoothly, but then you go into live actually dealing with the banks on the other end, the full end-to-end flow, then things get more interesting. So a few years ago when we implemented the 3DS or strong customer authentication, it was ready, so I was like, okay, I'm going to be the first one testing it in live. So it was enabled for employees. I went, bought food, randomly put together a basket, okay, and I had configured the fraud rule to definitely 3DS me. And I click, okay, make an order, expecting a pop-up on my banking app, and nothing pop up. And I see in the Bolt Food app that, oh, they're preparing my food already. Oh no, so what had happened is actually it was a positive scenario that my bank trusted me enough that even though we on Bolt side said that we need to do strong authentication for this person, the bank said, oh no, we trust, it's Jaanus, using Bolt Food again, so we take the liability, any fraud liability, and let them make an order. So the happy ending was that half of the office got a lot of pancakes on me. But yeah, I only test payments in live. That's like, I put my money there and I test it. I want to see how it flows. Like when we do a pre-authorization and then cancel the order, do you get the actual money back? How does it look like? This is something you have to do in some cases. Not everywhere. Like first you'd have to test in QA and in the safe environments, but that doesn't mean that it works in live. Live testing is absolutely necessary.
Your money or the company's money that you're testing with?
It was my money. Like we're very frugal at Bolt.
Yeah. The thing is, whenever
I learned it the hard way.
Yeah. Whenever we say testing live, every tester just goes, oh, no, because we start shaking.
It's fun, come on.
We call it chaos testing. That's another name for it, because it always institutes chaos. And I think the funny thing is when your payments, I did payment testing many years ago at the bank, and the MasterCard you think, oh, they've got all these, not a big global company, well, they swallowed up all the little payment providers. You think, oh, they've got loads of instances of they've got test, they've got pre. No. They've got live, and they've got what they think's live. So we test against all this. It's exactly the same, it's identical, and it goes live and it doesn't work because the merchant ID is different. It's an 8-bit or 16-bit, and it all just goes bad.
I do not recommend testing in live, just to be very clear.
No.
Test in test.
Yeah.
But you can't test user behavior in test.
No.
That's the only thing you should test in live, to be very clear.
The key takeaway here is that what I love about Jaanus is that I don't normally test, but when I do it.
Yeah. That needs to be a little bit of a meme when I do my testing live.
With my own money?
Yeah, with my own money.
So we've heard the funny stories. Due to lack of time, I won't share mine, but you can ask me in the coffee break. But what do you think is when you're dealing with this aspect of both testing and bad actors, what do you think is the biggest myth? Because quite often people have a knee-jerk reaction that we should do this, we should do that. But quite often, especially in payments, what I've found out is that these shooting from the hip reactions are actually plain wrong, or they're not effective. They're not going for the root cause.
Yeah.
So maybe you can come up with a couple of myths and what should be done instead.
I think the one that's already been mentioned here is that we feel like we're always chasing the bad actors. We're never ahead of them. And I think that's seriously limiting what we can do with unknown unknowns. Because yes, that's where we're worst at planning. And that's where, but if you know that, we know that there will be fraud attempts, we know that there's going to be, InfoSec incidents and attempts on our systems. We know that. We know that there's bad actors. And we know that, but we don't know what their tools will be or what their techniques will be or when exactly it happens. So instead of sitting there and admiring the problem of, it will happen to us, but we don't know what it is. You have to think about how you can be prepared. And as boring and as administrative and managerial as it sounds, and I apologize, this is why process matters. This is why you have monitoring. This is why you have testing. This is why you have, backups and business continuity plans. And this is why you have the process strongly in place. Because that means that if anything inevitably does go wrong, you understand what your triage is. You understand what looks like an anomaly. You know who needs to be involved, who needs to be informed. You understand when to escalate things, and you understand when even to pull the plug. So I think, the fact that we're always chasing is the biggest myth that's doing us the biggest disservice, because it limits our ability to be prepared in terms of processes and in terms of thinking.
Mm-hmm. I think when it comes to testing, I think the biggest myth when it comes to testing or security or fraud, everything like that, is that we always have to everybody needs to stop what they're doing and jump on it. Get it done. And some of because we have to react, we have to this, we have to that, and that's one of the dangerous things when we think about how we then test or approach that. I think one of the biggest myths I've seen in regulatory in companies that have quite a lot of regulation around them is it's done as a separate activity. So the myth being that, yes, we do this separately. I'm not touching that, I'm doing it here. Where actually, quite often than not, the testers who are interacting with the system are doing some form of security or fraud. They're being an odd actor trying to find these edge cases. We don't have to just move it to someone else. We are already doing it. We're doing probably the bottom 25%, the low-hanging fruit of all the sort of really good sec testing we need to do. But the myth is your company, oh yeah, we do that, but another person does that. That's over there. We don't need to do it. Well, no, we do it anyway. We just need to document that we're doing it, and we'll be better. So.
From my side, I think one of the biggest myths is that people think that there is, to stop financial fraud, there is tooling available. You can do strong customer authentication in each payment. You can verify the documents of the users. Like, you can do all of that stuff to stop financial fraud, which is true, but in reality, business doesn't work like this. Like, you as a customer, when you sign up for Bolt to order a ride, you don't want to show your documents. Like, this is not what we expect, right? So we don't know really who the user is. And then the same for strong customer authentication. Yeah, we could do it 100% of the time, kill all the chargebacks, but we would also kill the good user conversion. We have measured it. Other companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google have measured it. On average in Europe, you would lose 20% of your business if you did strong customer authentication for everyone on each payment. So that's why businesses don't do it. So some fraud is kind of inevitable. It's the cost of doing business. Either you take this small manageable fraud loss, or you lose 20% of your business. That's the trade-off. So I'm not worried about my job security, that with all the regulation that's coming down from Visa and MasterCard or European Union, there's still going to be this risk-based approach that you want to trust some customers at some point of time. And managing that balance, that's the hard part of fighting fraud, I would say.
Yeah, I think just to add to all of it, having run a couple of big bang bank migrations, and big bang means that if it goes well, it's a big bang, and if it does not go well, it's a much bigger bang. And I think the biggest myth with these kinds of like one-time, quite exclusive events that usually last maybe a weekend or in a better case, like a full day or 12 hours, is that you can like practice and then everything will, if you practice, then everything will go smoothly. And actually, what I have learned personally is that you practice not for things to go smoothly. You practice for the issues, the errors, you go in with half-baked things, because this is when the team learns how to actually recover. So the rehearsals are not about getting to a point where everything is perfect and nothing fails. Rehearsals are actually about getting to a place where everybody knows their role when things go bad, and you're able to really quickly recover from it. And in all fairness, the both migrations where I was involved in, things did happen, and the team was able to recover from them gracefully without end customers noticing anything. So I think the key here is not about expecting that things will go perfectly. The key is expecting that something will go wrong, and being confident that we as a team are able to recover from it because we have practiced that. Yeah. It's sort of the same as you go out with a kayak and you kind of expect that you will flip over. But the important bit is that you know what to do then when you flip over.
One of the first half of the Eskimo turn is really easy.
Yeah, it's the second part that helps you, right?
One of the funny things is, I've done some large data migrations that were big bang, and the rehearsal's really, really busy, but then the actual release is quite quiet, because that's what it needs to be. But I find it quite often than not that if we're doing big data migrations or anything like that, and something doesn't go as planned, everyone looks at the tester and goes, you know everything about this system, everything, tell us what it is. And I'm like, this is an edge case not even my mind could think about. But what I know, what we did when we did our data migrations is we took the data files and we corrupted them in a way that logically could be corrupted. So all the columns shift across one, and stuff like that. And then we decided what happened. Unfortunately, the data was put in incorrectly, so our data validation didn't work. But everyone just looks at the tester and goes, what is it? And I'm going, this isn't me. Because we're normally the communicators at the front, going, this could be me. So yeah, it's had a big bang migration pushes on data are a stressful weekend.
Yeah. So time to start wrapping up. So we've looked at a lot of things that have happened and what technology and fraudsters and bad actors have brought to us. What do you think the future will bring? So time to get either optimistic or pessimistic. So Jaanus, let's start with you.
Obviously, we can't look past AI. That's the big thing right now. And when you look at what's happening in the AI space with all the deepfakes and everything, it is concerning. Like, I'm a very paranoid person by nature, and I'm afraid that at some point they will get me as well, like these scammers, right? But at the same time, people have not yet figured out what to do with AI in fraud and anti-fraud and payment space. A couple of months ago, I was in the US at the biggest fraud and payments conference, and it was quite funny. AI was all the talk there, and they had roundtables, workshops, and then I sat next to a person from OpenAI, and we started talking, and in the end he told me that he's there himself to go to these various AI talks just to kind of, first of all, see that most of the time when people are talking about AI, they're not actually talking about AI, they're talking about traditional machine learning, and try to figure out what can AI and OpenAI do to help payments people and anti-fraud people, because we have not figured it out yet. I think fraudsters are a little bit ahead with the deepfakes because they're not held back by legal reviews, privacy reviews, European Union regulations, local regulations. They can experiment as much as they want to, and they're a little bit ahead, but how to use it for the good guys, this is still the interesting part, like how do we make it work for us?
I mean, it's clear that the future is more of everything and faster of everything, so it's clearly more complexity. And which is why I'm afraid the likes of, us on the stage will never lose our jobs as much as we want to go and raise sheep on a small island somewhere. So I think in terms of how we think about technology, the risk-based decision-making is one of the threads that's been going through what all of us have been saying. And that partially includes figuring out how fraud-tolerant or attack-tolerant your systems are. We can do fault-tolerant pretty well already, but how much the system absorbs the attacks or deals with them without human in the loop. And that then means that once, whether it's scripting or automation or genuine AI, takes care of the repetitive and the massive data part of the jobs, you then can use humans where humans are actually needed, because it frees up human talent for the more meaningful.
I think I agree. Yeah, the future is going to be AI, but I'm going to give 2 points of view, a good and a bad on AI, or what I think. So for me, the bad on AI in testing is it's starting, or a lot of testers are using it to replace thought. So they're using AI to scan the site, give me all my test cases, look at this picture, find all the edge cases, and we're asking machines to do that. Well, actually, the best part of a human is how we address something and how we come across it, because humans are using our software, not machines. Well, machines are trying to attack it, but humans are actually using it for its purpose. So I think that's one of the bad things, that we're maybe possibly losing our creativity. And I know in the industry at the moment, with a lot of testing going forward, everyone's becoming an engineer. And I really, really am against engineering. The title engineer, I want to be an analyst. My job as a tester is to analyze and think, not type. That's what I tell all my students. You need to spend 75% of your time thinking, only 25% of the time pushing the button.
But I want to be a prompt engineer. Come on.
Okay, prompt engineer. Just put loads and loads of titles. I think that's one of the things that in the future, I think what AI is is shaping. But I said that about automation years ago, and then they created automation engineers, which is even more funny. But I think that the good thing about AI in the future is that it opens up a significant number of tools for testers. There's lots and lots of tools out there. I mean, there's thousands of tools out there. That testers want to get into and want to use, but sometimes it's a bit difficult. With AI, it can help you learn that tool in your own way. If you're a visual learner, it'll say, okay, here's some videos to help you. If you like reading the manuals and the guides, okay, here's a guide. And you might say, well, can you put it in my own language? Can you put it in my tone of how I speak? Or, I'm dyslexic. Can you make sure the text isn't justified so I can actually read it more clearly? And I think AI allows us to do that. So it's opening up a vast amount of tooling for testers that we can pick up a lot easier. So that's really, really good. And I can't wait for that, because I think almost every tool now has got an AI element and a help bot and stuff like that. Because, I don't like learning new things at the best of times. And as a lecturer and a teacher, it's quite entertaining.
So maybe to kind of wrap it up, when I look back to some of the panels that we've had, it doesn't matter if it's about blockchain, automation, or AI. I think the human nature is kind of still the same. So when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So the current hammer is AI.
Yes.
And a second maybe food for thought is that the fool with the tool is still a fool. So on that optimistic note, I'd like to thank the panelists and go for the lunch. Go for the coffee break.
Thank you.
Thank you.